Assalamualaikum and hi. Today my group and I will present about the problem-based learning, which is the topic is terminate them integrately. Okay, before we start our presentation, I will introduce my team member. Okay, first is Muhammad Arif bin Johari, metric number 19X399. And next is Ahmad Shukri Haya, metric number 198688. And next is Muhammad Hazwan Sharif bin Muhammad Anif, metric number 198791. And next is Shakira Sazwani bin Muhammad Siddiq, metric number 198131. And last is myself, Nurul Fateh Najiha binti Yazid, metric number 198429. So we will go to the next slide. Okay, our next slide is about the presentation overview. Okay, which is first we will give the objective. Second is we will identify the problem from the trigger statement. And third is the factor that contribute to the weed control failure in immature oil palm plantation. And lastly, we will give the effective integrated weed management to solve the problem. So we go to the first is objective. Okay, our first objective in a problem-based learning, first is to identify the problem and explain the possible factors that contributing to weed control failure. And second, our objective is to give a suggestion in integrate weed management to overcome the problem. Okay, so we go to the next slide. Okay, so we will identify the problem based on the trigger statement. Okay, based on the trigger statement, that show the Encik Syafiq have about the 5 hectare of 4 years oil palm plantation in a good condition, but it high infested by Acetacia gangetica and Necrosis biserata. Okay, the old owner of the plantation has suggest to the Encik Syafiq to use the same herbicide, which is melsulfuron methyl. So Encik Syafiq do the same application to control the weed, but only 1 week it give a severely injured to the weed, but after 3 weeks there no weed die and it become increased and highly infested to the oil palm. Okay, so the problem that Encik Syafiq face is the encountering the weed control failure in 4 years oil palm plantation. Okay, so we go to the next slide. Okay, next slide is the list of the factors that contributing to the weed control failure in immature oil palm plantation. Okay, the first factors is the owner knowledge on control method, and the second factor is herbicide resistance. The third, abundant seed production, and fourth is a persistent and long-term survival of seed, and lastly is the presence of the vegetative part alongside the reproductive structure. So we go to the next slide. Okay, I will explain the first factors that contribute to the weed control failure, which is the owner knowledge on control methods. Okay, the knowledge of control method is very important to all owners plantations. Okay, if they lack knowledge of control method, especially they lack knowledge in herbicide application, in herbicide mode of action, and also they not expose themselves into the integrated weed management, they will face the problem in manage their in their plantation, and also they will repeat do a mistake maybe from the previous owner to themselves. Okay, based on Encik Syafiq's statement that I can say, maybe Encik Syafiq lack knowledge about all aspect that I have mentioned just now. So Encik Syafiq must spray the herbicide onto the weed without blocked by other weed, because it will give the effectiveness effect to kill the weed. Besides that, Encik Syafiq also must know that a certain type of weed, they have different herbicide mode of action. So before Encik Syafiq want to apply the herbicide, he must know the mode of action of herbicide of the weed that he want to spray the herbicide. So what I can say, the problem that Encik Shafiq face is the main factors is about the knowledge, because Encik Shafiq lack knowledge about the control method, and also he not expose himself into integrated weed management. This is because of Encik Shafiq continues do the same control method from the previous owner, and also he used a same herbicide which is methyl methyl to manage the plantation. So that's become the why Encik Shafiq faced that problem. So I will give to my next member, which is Muhammad Arif, to continue with a second factors in weed control failure.
Thank you, Fatin. So I will continue the presentation with the next factor of the weed control failure faced by Mr. Shafiq, which is herbicide resistance. So what is herbicide resistance? Herbicide resistance is the natural ability of the weed to survive and continue to reproduce even though they have been exposed to the same herbicide. Natural selection is the most common theory that have caused the weed to evolve the resistance against the herbicide. So as you can see from the picture given in the slide, we can see that there are some rare resistant biotype that might be survived when we apply the herbicide. So they will continue to grow until they mature and produce and also release the seeds. So these seeds will have better resistance against the herbicide. Some researchers, they suggest that rotating the usage of different site of action of the herbicide will slow down the process of the evolution of the resistance. By tank mixing of two chemicals, which is herbicide, that have two different site of action, it will prevent the herbicide resistance from occurring and also can control the weed. So let's move to the next slide. So the next factor of the weed control failure is abundant seed production. Weeds can produce prolific number of seeds and also have rapid vegetative propagation. As we know, in the Mr. Shafiq plantation, there are two weed species that have been grown rapidly, which is Nephrolepis beserata and also Acistacia gigantica. For the Nephrolepis beserata, it can be propagated by producing spores, clump division, rhizome and stolon production. The Nephrolepis beserata can produce and also spread the spores in large quantity, which is around hundreds of thousands of spore within a month. The small and light characteristic of their spore also will help the spores to be dispersed by the wind. For the Acistacia gigantica, they can be reproduced by producing seeds and also by trailing stems. The Acistacia gigantica will be able to produce 27 millions of seeds per hectare, and also a single plant of Acistacia gigantica could be bred into 4,000 plants within 4 months. The explosive capsule of this weed will help the seed to be dispersed around 6 meters away from the plant. So that's all for my part. I will pass this presentation to Shukri.
Thank you, Arif, for the previous slide. So now I will proceed to the next slide, which is persistent and long-term survival of seeds. Alright, for example, Acistacia gigantica alone, its seeds could survive up to 8 months in the soil. We must know why does this seed can survive for a longer time. But before that, we must know what is persistent. The meaning of persistent is continuing to exist or occur over a prolonged period, which means it can continue and keep continuing to exist over a longer time. Alright, so long-term survival means how does this seed can survive over a long period. Alright, so for as said before, this Acistacia gangetica seed can survive up to 8 months. Why? Because this seed will remain dormant for months, and this dormancy could only be broken if the seed have the favorable condition to survive and to germinate to occur. It means that if the seed alone have inside the deep soil, it will become the seed bank of the wheat, and this will make the wheat become harder to eradicate. Alright, my next point is the presence of vegetative part alongside the sexual reproductive structure. As we all know that if a plant or wheat want to survive or want to reproduce, they must have two things, whether it is sexual reproduction or non-sexual reproduction, or we can call it as vegetative part. In this case, I will talk about the vegetative part of plant, which is in this problem Acistacia gangetica and also Nephrolepis biserata. Alright, for the first one, Acistacia gangetica, if you can see at the picture, it has a rhizome, stolon and root. Each play different role of each part. Alright, so this Acistacia gangetica reproduces through its stem, which is in the vegetative part. When it contact with the ground, it means that even though you cut down the leaf part, you cut down the root, and also you cut down the stolon, but if the stem is still intact, it will reproduce and make a new plant of it. And also it started to produce seed after 6 weeks of growing through vegetative reproduction. It means that within a short period of time, this plant can regrow and make a new plant, even though you have cut down. So, presence of vegetative part alongside the sexual reproductive structure make it harder to eradicate. So, I will pass to Hazwan to tell you guys about the method that will help Mr. Shafiq.
How to overcome this problem?
My name is Hazwan. I will continue for the second part of this presentation, which is on the ways to overcome Mr. Shafiq's problem. So, under this part, we have 4 control methods. The first one is physical or mechanical control. The second one is cultural control, and the third one is biological control. Finally, is chemical control. Without further ado, I would like to continue my first point, the physical or mechanical control. Without further ado, I would like to continue my first point, the physical or mechanical control. This method, it is done by injuring the weeds manually. So an example for this method, we can do it by hand weeding. Hand weeding is an example. Or we can use tools to help us, or maybe a machine to help us do the weeding. Specifically talking about Mr. Shafiq's problem in his plantation, it is oil palm. So for oil palm, under the maintenance of it, we must do circle weeding within 2 meters of the trees, so that we can apply fertilizers and the active roots could absorb it faster. So Mr. Shafiq, he can use this approach by using a hoe or motorized grass cutter to do the weeding instead of using chemical control. So the good side of it is we can avoid herbicide resistance, and it is eco-friendly, although it is time consuming and it uses a lot of energies. On to the second point of this control, which is cultural control. So cultural control, it is done to provide unfavorable condition for the weeds to grow. An example under this control is cover crops. By planting cover crops, we can control the weeds. How? So basically, cover crops, it will suppress the growth of other weeds, and it can produce allopathic effects to the weeds. For example, Mucuna bractata, people use this a lot in oil palm plantation. Mucuna bractata, it will grow, it is a climbers, so it will grow on other weeds. When it grows on other weeds, this will suppress, it will smother the weeds and it will suppress the growth of the weeds. Other than that, it has allopathic effects. These effects, it will inhibit the germination of seeds. So these cover crops is just an example of cultural control. We can use other method of it, but it is eco-friendly and it doesn't depend on chemical control solely. So that's all for my part. Now we will continue for the other two controls that will be presented by Wani. Thank you.
Now I, Shakira Shazwani Minti Muhammad Siddiq, will explain about biological weed control. There are two control that Mr. Shafiq can take in his problem. First, long-term control actions. Second, short-term control. For the long-term control action, cattle grazing, it can be implemented too, but on conditions. Oil palm reach higher height and oil palm reach mature age, more than 5 years. This is to avoid cattle from eating the oil palm leaf. This grazing activity recommended only occur 4 times through cattle smart system. For the short-term control, chicken rearing. Rearing chickens in all palm plantation to control weed seed. The chickens will eat the weed seed of Acistacia gangetica. The aim for these activities is to reduce amount of weed seed. This suitable for immature oil palm. Suggestion of chemical control for Mr. Shafiq problem is Mr. Shafiq must apply different herbicides sites of actions from previous one. A systemic herbicide that could help to combat the weed that grow vegetatively. Mixing two types of herbicides, which is contact herbicides such as glufosinate and systemic herbicides such as trichlorophyll. According to Bayer, tank mixing of two effective site of action herbicide can control the weeds and prevent the herbicide resistance from developing.
Okay, so we have reached the end of the presentation. Thank you to all my members for your explanation. Okay, so the conclusion for Encik Shafiq of the problem, Encik Shafiq problem. So instead Encik Shafiq use chemical control, he can integration of use a biological, cultural and physical to over the weeds, and also to necessary to avoid the herbicide resistant, and also it use the eco-friendly method other than the chemical control method. So that's all from our group. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.